We've been talking a lot lately about election fatigue. I think a lot of people are getting really tired of hearing about all the negative things and really want to focus on the issues. As a matter of fact, there is a hashtag that has been trending on Twitter, at least it was last week. It was hashtag debate headache. And a lot of people thought that millennials were perpetuating this hashtag, thinking that they didn't really care about the election. And I've actually found that to be quite untrue. It seems to me now more than ever that young people are involved and they want to be involved. And this is a very, how do you describe this election year? Unique, I would say, to put it nicely. So this is really hard for some young people who are voting for the very first time. They're having to deal with all this information coming in from all these different platforms and really kind of surmise what they think. And I really think it's such a great opportunity today and tonight because Schools Out Washington is providing us to see what these guys are thinking. Now, Schools Out Washington reached out to their partners to find some youth who are first-time voters. Well, they found 4 exceptional young people who you're going to hear from in a minute, and they're going to share their views and their opinions on this election, but more importantly, the issues that matter most to them. Now, I'd like to welcome our panelists, if they'd like to come up here. These are our future right here. These are the people who are going to be deciding where we go from here. Please welcome our panelists, Tavin Dotson, Hikma Shirka, and Chris Romero. Now here on the end, Chris and Hikma are members of the King County Youth Advisory Council, and Tavin is involved at the YMCA Youth Government Program. All of you guys, young leaders, already making headway in society. They've all prepared some personal statements that they're going to read to us, and then after that, we're going to listen to what they have to say, and I'm going to ask them some questions. So we're calling this a panel, but we're not going to be debating anything. We're just going to be really opening a conversation and continuing a dialogue about what they think. So first, I'd like to ask Tavin to read his prepared statement.
Thank you, Amity. This is my first election, right? And every day I'm asked by someone, this is your first time voting. Who are you voting for is always the first question, and I always look at them because they're usually my grandparents, and I'm like, not who you're voting for. So, yeah, it's really exciting. It's so humbling because this is the first time in my entire life where I get to act upon the fundamentals of America. This is the first time where I feel like I am exercising every right I have as a citizen, the right to vote, my suffrage. And it makes me, I get jitters every time I think about my ballot. I received my ballot in the mail last Monday, and I freaked out. I called my mom while she was at work, and yeah, and my grandparents were all excited for me. I get a little excited when it comes to voting. And it's really exciting because this is the first time where I get to voice my opinion on the future of America. This is the first time that I get to have a vote in how I change the structure of America and how I want to see us change as a society. And thinking about this election and thinking about the next president of the United States, I always say, if I could ask the president to do one thing, it would be to change education and the infrastructure within education. As a first-time voter and still a student, I'm still going to high school. I'm in the Running Start program, so I am going to community college. Education is such a big part of my life. It's been a big part of my life. It's all my life is next to work. And so when I think about the president and what I want to see the leader of America do, it's change the infrastructure in education. I'm blown away every time I go to class and there's mold on the walls. There's a single hallway in my high school where there is 5 to 10 buckets catching the water falling from the ceiling. I have students who have to leave classrooms because the heater is too loud or they're coughing too much because it's just a very negative environment. And I would like to see the President of the United States change that because I know my school isn't alone. We hear about schools all across the nation that have problems with water, they have problems with air conditioning, they have problem with heating. In my school, teachers have to choose between heating and teaching because the heaters are way too loud for them to talk over. And so I would like to ask the president to make it their job to change that and make a standard in America to please give us the schools we want, give us those palaces of education we need to thrive. Because we cannot change, we cannot be successful adults if our schools are falling apart. And so when I think about that, it's really exciting to know that from here on out, when I vote, when I cast my ballot, that I can make decisions that'll help me as well as help future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. So where do you go to school? Where do you go to school again? No, I'm just kidding. All right, Hikma, please.
All right, hello. My name is Hikma. I'm a student at Seattle Central College, and I'm hoping to become a civil rights attorney. And I guess as someone who has always been interested in politics, voting for me is pretty cool. I've been bothering all my friends about registering to vote, and they've been really annoyed. But as a black woman, looking at like the history of voting rights and seeing the battles that people of color and women have fought to get us these rights, being able to vote is extremely empowering to me. And as a student or a young person, I know that everything we're voting for right now is going to affect our generation the most. And as a Muslim person, I see how often my religion is mentioned in the political world, and it's not in the most positive way. And I want to make sure that I'm voting for someone who understands that Muslim Americans are contributing to society just as much as any other American. And so seeing all this is very powerful to me. Like being able to vote is awesome, but to keep things short, being able to vote for the first time makes me feel like I'm somehow contributing to our future.
My name is Chris Romero. Right now, I'm in college working on my AA degree to one day become a commercial pilot. But it is an honor, it is a blessing, it's a privilege to be voting for the very first time. This country was founded on the freedom of choice, on the right to believe whatever we want. And I think it's great, I think it's awesome, I think it's fantastic that we have a bunch of movements going on. I think it's great that we have so many things right now, but if we don't cast that voice onto the ballot in this upcoming general election, I just don't think it matters as much. I think it's really important to officially cast your voice onto that ballot. I just got them early this week, and I'm very, very excited. I'm optimistic. I am so hopeful that whichever president wins will be able to make America win. I think that this country is going forward. I think, and I'm really optimistic that our next president will build upon the progress that we've already made. I am so, so honored to be finally able to vote now. Thanks.
And I love that everyone is so excited here to cast their vote. It's so great to see that. Tavin, I love that you called your mom. She was at work. She says, I love it, but I gotta go. I had a question for you. Who you're voting for? I'm kidding. We're not allowed to ask that. I was kidding. Thank you. You had mentioned education is very important. A lot of our schools are in ill repair and need to be fixed, and it's not just that, but it's funding for education. You're heading into college soon, and that's hard for most people. Where would you like to see education in 10 years? Would you like to see state or federally funded education? Where would you like to see that going?
I would like to see education go into a costless future, into where every student in America doesn't have to worry about what college they want to go to based off of price, as well as boosting funding for infrastructure, of course, is what I would really like to see. But it's through the giving people the opportunity to go to college shows that the community wants to empower you to learn more. And so, to answer your question, I would like to see a free college in the future. I would love to see education not have to cost us, because sometimes the choices I make as to the college I want to go to, or some of my friends are making, they're put down by how much it costs, and it blows me away.
And of course, the worst is choosing not to, because you can't afford it. You had mentioned that you were very active in arts and theater. Big issue has been with extracurricular activities. In a lot of states, we're losing our band classes, we're losing theater classes. Have you seen that happening at your level, and have you seen the community coming out to support?
Oh, yeah, at my high school, actually, after they redid the budget last year, they had to cut the entire theater budget. It was really minimal, but they had to cut it completely, and they also cut for the music and band department. And seeing Mr. Jones and the entire fine arts staff came together, and we did have a lot of support from the community. We had 2 big events put on, but it was really disheartening to see the state cut funding for arts overall, and we really, really felt that, especially in theater, because theater is something that I want to do in the future. And when I was told that we couldn't be putting on productions anymore because they cut that funding, it dampened my drive to do theater and to do the arts in the future. And it's something that so many students just like me want to do, theater and the arts, and seeing the government cut that funding, it hurts my future. I feel like my future has been shattered, and that my ability to grow in theater and that realm has been removed completely.
Interesting. Hickman, this next question is for you. You mentioned your ethnicity and religion. These are 2 issues that have unfortunately come up so many times in the election in a negative way. What is the conversation we should be having, our candidates should be having about this?
Well, in terms of, I guess, religion, it's always mentioned, like the negative stuff is always mentioned, and I would really like to see more of a conversation on the powerful things, the most, like the amazing things that Muslim Americans are doing to contribute to our society, because as a Muslim myself who's going to college, I've met Muslim attorneys, I've met doctors. We have like 10,000 people in the army, 10,000 Muslims, American Muslims that are in the army, that are fighting for our country, and that I've never seen mentioned. And that's the kind of conversation that I would like to see.
So more education in that.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Chris, you mentioned you wanted to make America, you wanted the candidate to make America win. You want to be a pilot, contribute to society. How do you see that happening when you say make America win? I mean, do you hope that it's the candidates are focusing on building our country up with business, or do you want to see more opportunity? Where do you see that going?
Well, I definitely do think that whichever candidate wins signifies that America will win. I think definitely too, really when it comes to when you take a look at candidates, I've done my research, I've seen them, I've been to multiple party candidates rallies, and I think I am confident. It left me in a position in which I can say, well, I mean, I'm going to choose one, and I do have a firm belief on one, but whoever wins, I think that will ultimately result in America winning, because there's so many people. I think I've never been so into American politics than ever before. I mean, I'm only 21, but I've seen and heard of senior citizens that are voting for the first time. I've heard of stories, I've read articles in which now they are like 40, 50 years, they've never voted. never vote. It's the most incredible thing, but now they are. It's a movement. It's so incredible, and to be a witness of all this is just amazing, you know?
Yeah. You know, you mentioned something that people are voting for the first time ever. This is an election that has garnered a lot of attention internationally, nationally, obviously. When I first started voting, we had newspapers, media. Now there are so many platforms: Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, not MySpace, but you know, everything. It is really hard, I think, when you're getting so much information at you in alerts, push notifications. How do you derive your fact from fiction, and how do you deal with all these multiple platforms and things coming at from you? And I'd like each of you to kind of tell us how you wade through all that, starting with you.
Yeah, I think the best thing is to talk to other people, as opposed to just making your decisions on your own, to reach out to your community members, to your family members, to your friends, because one thing that my youth and government advisor always tells me is she cannot vote until she has talked to her youth and government kids. What we think about ballot measures, what we think about candidates, because although we have so much information on the internet, like NPR doesn't cover any of it, but
Any of it?
well, NPR doesn't cover enough of it, I feel like. And so talking to other people lets you hear different points of view and what they think, and that can help wade through at least the big fluff up that I feel like some media outlets do. They fluff up some of the statements they make or facts that they choose. Talking to other people can almost rationalize that. Like, really, how much does that one statistic mean? Or how much does that one story we've been talking about for a while, what does that really mean to you, and what does that mean to the people you're talking to? It can help better inform my decision, and so talking to other people is the best way I use to wade through all that information.
It's very astute, because it really is, I mean, having that conversation, because unfortunately, you know, media outlets, they do choose which stories to put where and how much time each thing gets. So it's very astute to realize that. Hikma.
I think for me, it's school. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I want to become a civil rights attorney, so I take a lot of political science classes, and, you know, watching the debates is my homework. And so for me, it's definitely learning about all these things that I never knew about. And I also did the Running Start program, which is where you get to take college classes at your local community college and earn your college credits and high school credits at the same time, your junior year and senior year of high school. And so getting into like the college environment is where I had real conversations about real issues, because these are things that are not talked about in high schools or in public education, I guess. And so in college, when the first time I took an American government class, I was like, whoa, this is crazy, because I wasn't born here or raised here or anything like that, so I didn't know about anything, to be honest. And so school, definitely. And then I guess school gives you access to like books and all this other information that I didn't really knew existed.
Yeah. Chris?
I think connecting with people is really critical. I mean, you know, as you mentioned too, we do have social media in which we can find out, you know, world events, what's happening right now. But when you connect with people, when you talk with them, you figure out what their needs are, what issues are important to them. I think that goes to show the authenticity of what they really want. You know, I don't depend on social media 100%, but I do depend on it for, you know, events. And when I talk to them, I have this open mind with them. They will always have different beliefs. Okay, that's one thing, but it's when I open up to them, or when they open up to me, I connect with them. I don't use any kind of filter. I see them, and I want to learn more about what they need. And it's been really great, actually, talking with many students on campus, writing up some of these stories for the newspaper there to relay to the audience of the local communities. It's important to connect with people. Just because they have different beliefs doesn't mean that they're a bad person. And it's one of the most effective and most efficient ways to really learn about what issues really matter to them.
That's great. Do you guys find that at your various campuses that there are conversations now happening? Are you sitting in the breezeway or the cafeteria having these conversations?
For sure.
Yeah, I definitely have my select group of friends where I'll talk openly about politics with, and then I have a group of friends who I don't. So,
It's pretty smart.
yeah.
I guess that's the same for me too. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been bothering all of my friends to register to vote, and some of them are like, "Oh my God, go away," and they really don't care about politics at all. And then I have those group of friends that are, majoring in the same thing as me, and all we talk about is the debate or some new thing that popped up on the news or something like that. So yeah.
I think perhaps fear is what kind of stops them from opening up. If you support one candidate, you get judged, or the other candidate, you're still judged, or other candidates, you will get judged. So I think that really, it closes, it stops them from really opening up, and that sucks. It does suck because you don't get to see what their beliefs are. I mean, and it is what it is, to be honest. It is what it is. We do live in this world where there's just going to be a lot of judgmental people. That's never going to end. There's always going to be people who judge you. But when you're nice about the approach, I think when you're open about the approach, that's when they start, opening up to you.
Right.
And that's important, right? Like I said, I mean, that shows their authenticity. They're not going to, say random things just to have that, nice figure. But they're going to open up to you, I think, when you approach them in a really, really civilized manner.
And don't we all wish that was the case? And speaking of approaching in a civilized manner, let's talk about the debates. Hikma, you mentioned you've watched all of them for class. Have you all watched the debates?
I've watched the first one and the last one.
Okay. So these have been unlike the debates we've seen in the past over past elections. Have they swayed you? Because historically, these debates have been shown to sway more voters than they have in decades past. Has any of these debates swayed your opinions or the opinions of your friends or classmates? And are they something that you kind of want to tune out to because of the negativity and the banter? Are we talking about the issues, or is it too much mudslinging?
I definitely, prior to the primary elections, I was very unsure of which candidate I wanted to go for after the primaries. And so the debates really, they definitely solidified who I wanted to vote for, because the debate, I only watched the first one, and that's the only one I committed to, and then my youth and government advisor was like, we have to watch the other two, and I was like, or we don't. So they definitely did. I wouldn't say they swayed me. They more so solidified what I already knew, who I was already going to vote for, because the candidates are very polarized, and they definitely showed each candidate and where they stood. And so I feel like it defined both candidates for me. And when I talk to my friends and stuff, I only have, my youth and government group are the only people who really have watched the debates. No one else I know has been like, I watched the debates. I was like, I've seen a couple GIFs from the debate, and that's about it. So it didn't sway me, but it definitely solidified both candidates for me.
Hikma.
Well, for me, I was Team Bernie all the way. And so after after he was gone, I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I don't really know if I was honestly at a point where I didn't know if I wanted to vote anymore. And so watching these debates kind of reassured me and gave me options, I guess. And so yeah, that's kind of it.
Chris.
Well, I definitely stopped hating one of them. Right? And
I can't.
This is great. But I kept an open mind, right? I listened to them, and I really wanted to be fair with both candidates. I really wanted to pay attention to what they had to say. The way they express themselves may not, be in their may not work to their favor. But I wanted to be fair with both candidates, of course, after, they can only say so much during the debates, and that leaves one to do their research, read upon their plans to know the facts, read about the plans on what they want to do as a commander-in-chief. But it did help me, of course. I mean, when one question was asked or when one statement was said, the other wanted to attack. And it kind of goes to show how, their temperament is. If they're really suited to deal with foreign leaders, if they're suited to deal with terrorism, if they're suited to deal with the nation's crisis. So the debates helped. They helped substantially. It helped me to show who they are, personality-wise, too.
Good answers. And I'll ask this to all of you, and it may take a moment because, there's a lot going on. It is scary out there. So my question would be to all three of you, what scares you most about the future of this country and where you see this going?
So we have two options, right, for candidates.
It doesn't have to necessarily be candidates. But if it is a candidate, that's fine. But overall, what is the issue that concerns you the most, that scares you?
Issue-wise, I would say, it really does come down to education. Like, not to just speak to a crowd of listeners, but education, honestly, it changes. Without education, without a proper education, the foundation of a society is broken. It's absolutely shattered. Thank you. If your kids aren't taught well, if your kids aren't taught to think for themselves, if your kids aren't taught to analyze and to think critically about situations, then the current election or how we respond to a disaster or how we make policies is cracked because the next generation won't have the tools they need to prepare themselves for disasters or to prepare themselves for an election like this. Because without the fundamental, whatever we put into our education is what is going to change the future. And so we really need to focus on education, and I feel like if we focus on education the next 2 election cycles and really hammer that down, we could set ourselves for the future. But until then, we're going to be in this state of limbo.
Well said. Very well said. Hikmah.
Can you repeat your question again?
The question was, what concerns you the most in the state of this, just in a state of affairs right now and going forward?
For me, this election brought out a lot of hate. And although it was coming from candidates or something like that, it showed the people, I guess, the American people. And I never realized how much hate, I guess, there was in this world. So I guess that's what terrifies me the most. Because, there was a point in this election where I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I want to go to school today. I don't know if I want to leave the house today. And so, yeah, that's what scared me. But I guess to add on to what you said, it does go back to school, showing people or teaching students to celebrate, differences and diversity. And, there are a lot of Americans who come from different parts of the world that practice different religions. And if we were to celebrate that in education, then all this hate wouldn't exist.
I'm scared that there's going to be more racial inequality. We are the United States, not the divided states. I am so hopeful, and I am scared of that. More of that is going to be in this country, right? Just like Hikmah said, there's already enough of it right now. There's a lot of injustice coming from law enforcement. There's a lot of just division. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the diversity that we have. Right? I love the individuality of human natures. I love seeing people who are different to me. It's great. But when we are divided in the different metaphorical sense, if that makes sense, then we can't run as a country. We can't move forward. And I want our next president to unite us, to bring back more of that unity, to really advocate more on being more accepting of each other. I'm afraid that there's going to be more racial inequality. I hope there isn't. Okay, I hope there isn't.
So I asked, yeah. So I asked about fear, but what's more important than that is hope. Let's talk about hope. What do you hope for out of this election and going forward?
The election will be over.
Yes. Yes.
That I'm very hopeful for. And springing off of that, we can look to our future, and I'm really hopeful of our future. America has gone through a lot of stuff in the past couple of 100 years. So I have faith in America, and I have faith that after this election, we will grow as a country and we will change, and I hope to God it's for the better. So I'm hopeful and faithful that America, we're going to grow from this experience, right? We all have our bad days. We all have that bad relationship, and I feel like that's how I feel this election was a bad relationship. And it's time to break things off.
Yeah.
And
It's over.
Yes.
Bye, Felicia.
14 days.
Hikma.
I guess the really cool thing about this election is it got people to go out and read and educate themselves about issues that were going on, because it got so much attention. I don't know if it's been like this before, but it got a lot of attention, and it got a lot of people to look into these issues and educate themselves. And I see a lot more advocates now, and I see a lot more people working to make sure, you know, who they think represents them is who is going to win. And again, I do have hope, I do have faith in America, and we're not gonna go backwards. I'm hoping that we'll improve in some way, and it will, again, we're not gonna go backwards. We're moving forward, and it might take longer, but we'll at least be moving somewhere. So yeah, I have hope.
I'm always hopeful that better days are coming. I think that at this point, things can only get better. Well, some don't think so. But the deeper you fall, the higher you rise. And I'm stuck with that mentality. I'm only stuck with like positive mentality. I can only think forward. I can't just, you can't drive forward looking in the rearview mirror, and that's the hope I have for America. I think that we can only make things way better. We can change this whole thing around. And yes, that's true. I can't wait for these elections to be over. I really can't wait. Because the campaigns alone, these elections have in itself created some diversity in the society. And I mean, once that's over, I mean, things are going to get better. I'm really hopeful for that.
Let's hope so. Definitely. A little less than 2 weeks, so we're getting there. No one is more tired than the journalist, trust me. Do we have more time for a few more questions? I'm looking out there. Yeah? Okay. Let's get some educators around us right now, right? What would you guys say, because you're so close to your education right now, what would your message be to educators? Because I know a lot of us, as you're teaching, it's important to get kind of your perspective. What would your message to educators be about maybe students coming to them for advice or for guidance in this election, and maybe even for some of the issues, certain initiatives that maybe are difficult to understand and need to be unpacked? What would your advice be to educators?
My advice to educators would be to see your students as resources as opposed to people you're feeding information to. And I understand that we as students, we're in a classroom and we're there to learn and we're there to listen to the teacher and have educators, whether it be after school programs or in school teachers, to see us as people. More often than not, I find at least one or two teachers who don't see their students as people, or who don't give them the time of day like you would give another person. And it's really, really difficult to be, I don't understand, but I can see how difficult it can be for an educator to teach or to be that person, that well-poised, to be that friend to a student. I can see how hard that can be to a classroom of people who don't want to be there. Like, I've been in classrooms that I don't want to be in. And if the teacher if an educator could be just a little bit more, can be stronger than the students, it would really. So there's this one teacher at my school.
Go.
This one teacher at my school, no one likes her. And she is a perfect example of a teacher who has let her students take her over. Her students run rampant. Like, she has put herself on the students' level and has lost all of their respect. And I hated being in that class because I didn't learn a thing. I didn't learn a thing all year. And so the one thing I would tell to an educator is, please be the rock of the classroom, because you're in a classroom of so many people who have tons of hormones and who are going crazy and who don't know who they are and are trying to find themselves in this world. And sometimes you need to be more personal instead of teaching or just academic. It's having that personal connection with your class. I've seen it, like, I've seen teachers such as that one I did not name. And then I've seen teachers who have been my friend and who have helped me through my education. And I've seen students in that same classroom, in that dysfunctional classroom, who seemed like they were rude people and nasty. And yeah, they might have had terrible home lives, but when they were moved into a classroom with a teacher who connected with them, that student flourished. I've seen my peers flourish in certain classrooms and deprecate in others. And so if that teacher can be a rock, if the teacher can be that personal person and treat other people like people, I've seen students flourish, and I think educators can really help on that.
And it can really change the focus of a student's life. You and I were speaking earlier about it just takes that one teacher that inspires you, and boom, you're lit afire by some passion. Hikma, what would your advice be?
Ooh. One thing I hated about school was how standardized it was. And I would really like school to, I would like it to be a system, that provides independent thinkers, and a system that encourages students to be different and think outside of the box, and a system that helps students develop a new way of thinking. And like I mentioned earlier, I learned a lot from the college environment because of how open the discussions were. And I would really like educators to talk about real issues that their students are facing. Like, let's talk about racism. Let's talk about all these other things that your students are facing right now. And especially with this election, we've seen so many issues come out and become really big. And these students are facing them every single day. And as interesting as Shakespeare might be, it'd be really cool to talk about these issues. And let's say in like an English class, let's write about what racism means or how that affects your students. And so to make, I guess, your teaching a lot more real and to talk about what these students are facing in real life.
Dr. Jack Birmingham, president of Highline College, implemented the concept of really being accepting of all people coming from all different walks of life. And I was told today during a meeting that there's like a professor or two, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to embarrass them, but there is, I've been told that there is a professor that has this thinking of, oh, well, this may be his college, but this is my classroom, and I get to do what I want in my classroom. I guess my advice is just be accepting of all people. My advice for all educators, be accepting of everyone, whether you're, whether what pigmentation of skin you have or what person you prefer to love. I think it's so important to accept, everyone, because I think that will lead to the success of students, in my opinion. There's my advice.
That's great. Thank you, all three of you. I'd like to ask in closing if you could just give us a closing remark about where you're going in the future, how you'll stay involved, and maybe how you encourage your peers.
Yeah, so I'm going into theater, or I hope to go into theater and political science later on. And I really hope to see in the future, in like the next 20 years, a society where we don't have schools that are falling down, where we have teachers who are also people, and where we have students who don't want to like kill each other in the hallways. Those are three things that I hold really dear to my heart, because it's 2016. Hate doesn't need to be present in my education. Hate is not a thing I need to be having from my peers as well as my teachers, as well as my educators. I truly believe that school is a palace of education, and I'm not seeing that in America. And so as I move forward, I will personally be making voting decisions as well as advocating for educational reform and getting more money in the schools, more money in the arts, and also encouraging my friends and people that I know to focus more on education, because education doesn't stop when you graduate. Education doesn't stop when you get your bachelor's degree, when you get your master's degree. Education is something that we use to build the next generation. It is something that changes our society. It changes the fundamentals of our society, and how we set those and how we treat education will affect us far into the future. And so the sooner that we can get on top of that and really make fundamental changes to the tons of flaws that we have in education, I feel like will set us up for a better society and set us up for better people.
Yeah. Well, you stay active, I think we will be.
Thank you.
Hikma.
I'll tell a little story to do the closing remarks, I guess. So what got me into civil rights and politics was when a couple years ago my mom applied for a job, and she got an interview, and the guy that was supposed to be interviewing her was very excited to meet her, and he basically made it sound like she already got the job because of her resume. And she went for the interview, and he saw how she was dressed, and he asked her if she would be wearing the hijab or the headscarf while working, and she was like, yeah, of course I'm going to be wearing the scarf. And he's like, oh, okay, then there's no point of me interviewing you. And so she didn't end up doing the interview. Like, he didn't even take her to the interview room. She ended up going home, and I got back from school that day, and I asked her how her interview went, and she told me what happened. And so I was like, okay, I don't think that's allowed. And so I started looking up like rights that people have in schools or like in the workplace and stuff like that. And I got in contact with CARE, which is, I think it stands for like Council on American Islamic Relations or something like that. And I told them about what happened, and they helped my mom get the job. Like, they fought. They wrote a letter to the company and complained about what happened, and I think the guy ended up getting fired or something like that. And so I thought it was really cool. Yeah, I thought it was really cool that, that someone who knew about civil rights and things like that could get someone fired for not doing their job properly. And so I wanted to do that. So I started looking into rights that I had as a student and my mom had in the workplace, and I was telling her, and she's like, oh, I could take a 5-minute break to go pray? I'm like, yeah, you can. And that got me really into civil rights, because if my mom didn't know about her rights, she would not have been able to fight them. And I really want to be an advocate for people who don't know what their rights are and who can't fight for them themselves. And I guess that comes into education, because with this broken education system, these students are not able to fight for themselves, and I would really like to be that person.
You know, all my life I wanted to be a pilot, a commercial pilot, and that's going to happen. But just recently, I've been falling in love with something else, with community service, with going around, with the organization that I'm with, King County Youth Advisory, with Karen, with Hikma. It's been so rewarding, and I've been loving it and loving it ever since the day I started. Or volunteering too, as well for the city of Seattle, for the SEIU, for the city of Des Moines. I mean, it's all so rewarding. I've been loving it so much, talking with community members, talking with local candidates, and so I think in 20 years, or perhaps even less, after I fulfill my dream as a pilot, I think I am going to. I think I will be working in whether it's through public service or whatever, but I do want to be involved at a higher level, at an official level within my communities, that I can tell you.
Yeah. And I have no doubt you will. We'll wait for the campaign signs. All right, well, I don't know how we all feel about the campaign, but I certainly feel a lot better about the future speaking to you three. And thank you so much for sharing your views tonight. I think that it's really refreshing to hear people so passionate about voting and protecting and preserving that right to vote and making sure it's so important and telling your peers. I think it's great. All right, big thanks to them. Are there any closing statements anybody would like to, I don't know if we have time to open this up to questions, or are there any questions that anyone would like to ask, or? No? No? Yes? No? I can't see. The lights are so bright. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you were going to close it, I was like, oh, I don't know if you're closing it.
I loved it. Thank you.
All right. Oh, it's back. Anyway, I just wanted to say a quick thank you again to all the panelists. Super, super awesome to hear your perspectives. You have our votes next election. And just wanted to say that tomorrow we are meeting again bright and early. We're going to hear from a leading expert in youth development, Dr. Sean Ginwright. And we look forward to another wonderful day of sessions. I'm not sure if we can top that, but we'll do our best. Good night. Thank you.